Hi, everyone. My name is Amitai Richman, Product Marketing Director at K2view. And with me today is Don Spoerke, Senior Product Manager from Rocket Software, and Simon McVeigh, VP Global Sales Engineering here at K2view together with me. And before we get started, I just want to cover a few housekeeping items to make you familiarize you with the controls. So at any point in our session today, if you have any questions, please feel free to send them in. You can do so by clicking on the question mark on the top right on the right side of your screen. There's a control bar. You click on questions. So please don't hesitate to send in questions, and we'll answer at the end as many questions as we have time for. If we don't have time, then we'll try to get back to you after the session via email. Also, please note there's a poll button. We'll have one poll question, which we encourage you to answer and participate. So that's for the polls, and there's also a paperclip, where you can download attachments. And that's really the main things today. Don, could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. And as you said, Amatai, my name is Don Spoerke. I'm the Senior Product Manager for Rocket Software, responsible for the technology that Simon's going to be introducing to us a little bit later. And I've got over 30 years of experience in the mainframe industry.
Awesome. Simon, please.
Hey everybody, so Simon McVeigh. I run the sales engineering team for K2view. I've been with the company a couple of years. Before that, long history in data management, selling really within enterprise, large enterprise customers. Really excited about this partnership and looking forward to getting into the content that we got today.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. Yeah, we officially launched a partnership between Rocket Software and K2view this week. We're very excited about it, and we're going to show you today what that partnership looks like at the product level. We're going to do a live demo, so we're very excited about that. So let's jump into it and just run through the agenda quickly. So we're going to take a quick look at who Rocket Software is and K2view in case you're not familiar. We're going to talk about mainframe and test data and the challenges between the two. Then we're going to talk about some real world fixes on how to provision test data from the mainframe, to mask mainframe data, to generate synthetic data, all of that good stuff. Simon's going to show what that looks like with a live demo. And we're also going to talk about AI ready pipelines. So we're very future oriented. And without further ado, we're going to jump in. And Don, if you can please introduce who Rocket Software is.
Absolutely. Thank you, Amatai. Appreciate it, and appreciate all the folks that are attending today. As Amatai said, we announced the partnership officially this week, and we're very excited about what we can bring to the table. Just a little bit about Rocket Software. We're a 35-year-old company, and we bring that experience to the mainframe. We're a global organization that spans many, many verticals, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. There's over 3,200 Rocketeers. That's what we call ourselves internally. It's kind of a badge of honor to be a Rocketeer. And I think the nice thing about this is that of that 3,200, 2,100 of those folks are engineers, and they're the ones that are actually supporting the over 12,000 customers that we have. We're very, very proud of our partner ecosystem, and now very happy to have K2view as part of the fold. And another thing that really gives us a lot of credibility, I believe, in the mainframe market space is that we have over 20 champions. And this is a very exclusive club, if you will, that recognizes expertise, but also for your evangelization of the mainframe platform. All of this is driven by our guiding principles of empathy, humanity, trust, and we practice that internally, and we also practice that with our customers and our partners. So why should you trust Rocket Software with your mainframe assets? Probably the most valuable assets in most organizations probably is our unparalleled expertise. As I mentioned in the last slide, We've got many people that have over 40 years of experience working for us at Rocketeer, and that knowledge is very hard to replicate. And over those years, we've built some very, very strong partnerships. We already talked briefly about the human side of our company, but that really helps us to focus on not only growth, but the development of our partners. And we are committed to the platform. A lot of our products are platform agnostic, but the ones that are devoted to the mainframe, we make sure that it takes advantage of every mainframe capability that is available to us. Probably the biggest challenge, and I know Simon's going to talk about this here in just a moment and kind of reiterate this, but why is the mainframe such a challenge? It's very complex to access. Typically, mainframe access is limited to COBOL, PL1, even assembler programs in a lot of cases. And each of the mainframe data sources have their own unique ways of accessing them. So the ability to now use standard SQL to access that data really brings a new dimension to solving that challenge. The data resides in very unfamiliar sources and formats. All of these data structures were designed well before there was anything called relational databases. And with that has some unique data structures, like, for example, packed decimal numbers, where we store 2 digits or they store 2 digits in a single byte. And that really presents a very unique challenge for accessing that data. Most cases require some sort of a DBA or subject matter expert to decipher that data. But what we've done with our technology, put it into a standard format and a standard encoding practice, even taking care of all the EBCDIC to ASCII conversions. And the final thing is that anything that we do on the mainframe cannot make any impacts on our production systems. And that's why we use native access methods under the covers to provide real-time access to that data. In addition, our technology that Simon will be talking about uses the zip processor, which provides a lot of relief to the general purpose processor, both from a resource perspective and a financial perspective. And to ensure that our data access is as efficient as possible, we incorporate parallel I/O processing. And just to wrap up here, we are trusted by some of the largest organizations across all verticals in the world. Just things like 43 of the top 50 Fortune 50 companies, 9 of the 10 top banks, and so on and so forth. And I think our expertise will carry through the implementation of the K2 technologies. So I'm done talking. I'm going to go over to Simon, and he gets to do the really cool stuff, and that's show you K2view.
Fantastic. Thanks, Don. Yeah, so I mean, I said this at the beginning. I'm really excited about this. This has been a partnership really that has been born out of actually working together in the field and solving real problems for some of our largest customers. So really, really excited to dig into this. And I wanted to start by just expanding on what Don had shared, just in terms of why this is such a big problem. And this really kind of breaks down, and I'm going to give you some real world examples. And these have come, over the last year that we've been working together with Rocket. We've really encountered these and lived them because we've been going out to, whether it's large national banks, retailers, various different industries. And what we typically find when the mainframe comes into the picture is that it can, even just from an access perspective, it's not even about the technology itself, but the limited number of skilled experts and just how many demands there are on their time means that we've seen in practice. I think we were working with a large national bank in the last few months, just to get access to the right person who knew that particular vSAM file for that particular copybook or layout that we needed to use for test data was a real problem. So sometimes it could take weeks even just to get access. And I think what we've seen when you think about things like test data in the mainframe world, it's a real burden for mainframe experts because they're already dealing in many cases with a high demand on their time. So then when you've got external teams that are not on the mainframe saying, oh, we need mainframe data to do our testing, that becomes yet another burden. And it's like, okay, it brings up this whole load of additional obstacles that we'll talk more about. So the idea that even when you've got the access, right, how do you make sure that you're going to be able to identify all the sensitive data? When you start to move the data out of the mainframe, whether it's to a data lake or maybe into another operational system or just into non-prod versions of the mainframe, then the data needs to be masked, right? You can't take PII out of production and not mask it. So who's going to do that? How do you find the PII? How do you make sure you've got all of it? That becomes very problematic. And then this also brings up another problem, which is that even when you have got some idea of where the PII is, the sensitive data, and you mask it, how do you mask it in a way that ensures consistency? And a simple example that we faced recently was, we were working with a large national bank, and they really had this concept. They have obviously an account, a customer that can hold multiple accounts. And if we were to change the social security number of that customer and the account numbers, because we have to mask them, you still have to keep the customer whole, as they called it. So you need to make sure that you've got that consistency, and the social security number changes in every place that it occurs for that particular customer. And if you do have any references, that you keep that integrity, even if you don't have referential integrity necessarily on the mainframe, you may have it when you're injecting that data from the mainframe into a relational database. So you need to respect that. So inconsistency is a big problem. And then the last thing that we see is just this general concern of, wow, okay, if you're going to be taking large volumes of data from the mainframe and masking that, and then writing it back into a non-prod mainframe or even into other systems, or you're doing a bit of everything, what's going to be the impact on our MIPS usage? And very, very worried, obviously, about the unpredictability of the impact on that cost and that usage. And there are specific ways that Rocket has addressed that problem, and we together address that problem, which we'll go into. So that's the problem. I'm going to talk next about, just to give you a little bit of background about K2view, but before that, I think we're going to go to a poll question.
Yes, if you can, guys, if you can please look on the right side of the screen, there's a polls button. Go ahead and click on that, and there's a question there relating to what Simon spoke about. What is your biggest challenge in securing and provisioning mainframe data for testing? So please go ahead and vote, and we'll try to come back to the results later. Simon, if you don't mind continuing, please, we'll circle back to the poll.
Sounds good. So a bit about K2view. So we have been around half as long as Rocket, but about 15 years now. And really, we've come through originally starting out in the telco industry, solving some of the most complex migrational challenges for the largest telcos, who we're still working with and still helping. But we've really, over the last few years, expanded into a lot of different additional verticals. So, banking in the FinServ industry, with insurance as well. It's been a huge growing sector for us. We've seen a lot of growth in retail as well. And, there's many other kind of sectors that I don't have time to mention here. But the biggest theme, really, from what you see here on the slide is we're used to dealing with the most complex enterprise environments that are out there. We recently onboarded one of the largest retailers in the world. We've onboarded several national banks in the last few months as well. These are very highly regulated, complex environments, and we're used to being in that space, right? So we have a lot of different ways that you can deploy our technology. We can adhere to all of the security policies within even highly regulated environments. And that's also been what's driving what you see on the left-hand side is the wide range of different systems that we're able to connect with. K2view in the name is interesting because, as some of you'll know, K2view is one of the hardest mountains to climb. But the view from the top is amazing, and that's kind of the philosophy, right? We solve some of the hardest problems out there. We're used to dealing in the most complex environments, but the results once we get there are really, really impactful. The last thing I'll mention here is that we're very fortunate to have some great endorsement in the industry. If you want to reach out to Gartner and hear what they have to say about us, we have a great relationship. And some of these experts have even become customers of ours as well. So yeah, really, we have a pedigree in the enterprise, and what I'm most excited about really with this partnership is what this unlocks that was previously kind of unthinkable really for the mainframe ecosystem. Now, not to say that there aren't kind of more siloed approaches to dealing with this. So, I know that in some cases there have been masking solutions that are out there for the mainframe, but they tend to focus very specifically on the mainframe and not really dealing with the reality that the mainframe sits within, which is it's not an island, and it has to operate within the context of the broader enterprise. So this really unlocks all these four main use cases. We're going to focus today on really the first three of these. I'm going to take you through an example of test data management. I'll mention what we do in terms of synthetic data. We're going to spend a bit of time on that. And we are going to have a follow-up session that digs into the agentic use cases on the mainframe as well. But because of this partnership with Rocket and what Rocket Data Virtualization, which is what we use to actually interface with the mainframe, standardizes that access for us, it really just means that anything that K2view can do can now be done on the mainframe, which is incredibly powerful. So just quickly on each of these, enterprise data masking typically is masking the entire, every kind of element of PII that you have on the mainframe. That can be done consistently with other systems as well. So an example from a recent customer, we had mainframe with vSAN, QSAN, we had IMS in there. We also had to then ensure consistency across 4 other systems, including SQL Server, Oracle. We had a NoSQL database in there as well. So it's really about combining this together to make sure that the entire enterprise is safe. Test data management is really about enabling testing teams, QA teams, to be able to provision subsets of test data securely and do so without impacting production, with masking all of the data, making sure it's secure, and then being able to provision it without any technical knowledge. And that's really, really important. Synthetic data management really enables you to create effectively an air gap between your production and non-prod systems and synthetically generate, instead of taking mass data from production, it's really about generating completely novel data, but also being able to keep all the statistical distribution, the characteristics of that data, even though it's non-sensitive, which is a very growing area of our business. We're seeing a lot of traction around this as companies are looking for more secure ways, but they don't want to sacrifice accuracy. And then finally, the agentic mainframe. I mean, this is incredibly exciting. Imagine being able to deploy an agent that can actually securely interact with specific parts of the mainframe to answer questions that people are asking, but do it in a way that is going to be very policy driven, very tightly controlled, and also being able to mask that data in flight as it moves into the agentic layer. So we'll dig into more into that shortly. Actually in a follow-up session, I know we're going to have on that. So here I'm going to go into an example. I'm just going to build this out briefly here. An example of how we solve test data management as a problem domain. And we take platform approach to this, meaning that everything that you do on K2view, whether it's masking, whether it's test data, whether you're synthetically generating data, it all happens on this single platform, which means, you know, we're using the same approaches each time. Users don't have to relearn a new way of doing things just because they've got a new use case. And it starts on the left-hand side with being able to connect to a broad range of different source systems. Now, we're talking obviously today about the mainframe, and I do have an architectural diagram I'm going to share shortly that'll show you how we actually manage this connectivity. But that gives obviously access to, you know, everything that Rocket's RDV solution supports. So just to mention a few, it'll be, you know, vSAM, QSAM, IMS, Adabas. There's actually a very long list that I won't go through now, which you can find on Rocket's website as well. And then we're adding to that everything that K2view already supports, whether it's DB2, SAP, we connect to Salesforce, Workday. And a lot of this has been, you know, IP that we've built, and we're able to use JDBC drivers as well. So that's how we connect to these source systems, and we're pulling that data out of these systems, and in memory, we're then able to actually analyze the PII to using our catalog, which I'm going to show you briefly. So once the PII has been identified, then we're able to do what we call high fidelity masking. This is not your general kind of masking where you set, you know, all the dates of birth to the same date, or, you know, you kind of put asterisks across all of the credit cards, because that renders all of the data useless for testing. We don't want to do that. So the masking that we do is going to preserve the accuracy and the referential integrity of the data. And it's also going to be consistent. We then, once we do that, we're able to subset the data consistently across multiple systems. This is really, really powerful, because when you're testing, you don't want to have to take the entire copy of production and then, you know, push that into the non-prod environments. That means your non-prod environments have to be very expensive. They have to be pretty much production-like. And most testing plans don't call for all of your data. They call for subsets of the data. So being able to right-size the data set just for the test that you have is really, really important. And we can do that using a self-serve experience. Then I'll just mention on the right-hand side here in step 3, some of the operations that we can perform. Subsetting, I've mentioned one of them. We could be synthetically generating data. We have a unique way of modeling, essentially using a kind of, think of it like a data product approach to organizing the data. So we're not just dealing with individual vSAM files or individual tables in a database. We know that we're masking a customer, or we're synthetically generating order or a transaction or a vehicle or whatever, you know, the data product would be. And that allows us to operate in context, right? When we're masking, we're not just masking some attribute without knowing that it's part of the customer, and we've got to keep the customer whole and ensure consistency. We can also take care of things like snapshotting an environment and then rolling it back to a previous point in time. This is really useful if you're just about to run your tests. You snapshot, you run your tests. That obviously modifies the data, but then you can roll it back to a previous known state without having to ask all of the other testers and QA leads to stop working and roll the entire environment back. You can actually just roll your data set back, just your test data. And then the final on the right-hand side is obviously we're not just synthetically generating data or subsetting masking, we're actually provisioning this data into the non-prod environment. So whether that's UAT, your QA, a dev environment, we're doing that into multiple systems using whatever the best practice connectivity is for that particular system. In the case of RDV, we're actually writing back into those vSAM files, right, or QSAM, IMS. And then the last thing I'll say here is that this is all available through a self-service portal, as you'll see during the demo. But also, most of our customers automate this through CI/CD. So we have a very comprehensive API that we can use as well. And I'll show you that briefly. Okay, so Amitai, do you want to do the poll results now, or should I keep going?
No, please carry on. We'll get back to it at the end if we have time. Thank you.
Sounds good. Okay, so a bit about how this actually works under the hood. So the first thing that you need to know about RDV, which is the term for Rocket Data Virtualization, which is what we use to actually connect and interact natively with the mainframe, is that it runs completely natively on the mainframe itself. This is really, really powerful because it means the level of integration is very, very deep. And as Don had mentioned before, Rocket have really done an amazing job at utilizing everything that the mainframe has to offer natively to make this available. So you can see here that this is where the RDV is actually running on the mainframe. We have then it makes available a JDBC gateway that we access through TCP/IP. So for those of you who are a bit more technical, we access this via JDBC from K2view Studio. Rocket also has an Eclipse-based studio that you can use for configuring the virtual tables and the views. And why this matters, one of the most common things that we see is vSAM files that have multiple copybooks, right? And we had a recent example, one vSAM file with 135 copybooks. And the only way you know which copybook to use is basically the record segment is going to tell you. So we have a way with Rocket to split those up into virtual views so that we can actually deal with the same vSAM file, but we can really read it with the right copybook. And that's an example of how we would use, configure Rocket Studio to allow us to actually read those individually, even though it's all in the same vSAM file. On RDV on the mainframe also means that they can handle things like query caching. They can do parallel execution. This also means that and this answers the MIPS MIPS and MSU concern, is that if you have a zip engine on your mainframe, then that can actually be utilized for the majority of processing. I've seen with RDV getting up to kind of 70, 80, even 90% of the workload being processed on the zip engine and not counting towards your MIPS usage. So a very effective way of handling the interaction with the mainframe. And in addition, I'll point this out, K2view has ways to not have to go back to the mainframe if we've already got that data that we need in the test data store. Feel free to ask any questions that you have about this. We'll definitely leave time for Q&A as well. So that's how we do the access itself. I wanted to talk, just before we go into the demo, briefly about synthetic data generation. Because as I mentioned, this is a really growing part of what we're seeing in the market, a lot of traction around this. Because if you think about the ways that you secure data, there are multiple different techniques. We talked about masking as one of them, but the most secure approach is always going to be to synthetically generate the data from scratch, because you don't have any connection at that point with production, right? But the key thing that, if you've got into the world of synthetic data, you'll realize pretty quickly that there is no single technique that works in every different scenario. In some cases, you might be building new application functionality, and you won't have training data to use an AI-based approach. So you really need a workflow engine that can actually generate data from scratch, literally from thin air. And that is what we refer to as rule-based synthetic data generation. So that can be really driven based on if you just have a schema, or maybe you understand the kind of complex rules that are needed to generate that data, and we can create data from scratch. If you do have training data, we can actually use AI, connect to the mainframe, pull that data in, mask it, and then train a generative AI model to then synthetically reproduce more variations of that data with all the statistical properties that the original training data had, but it will be 100% novel data. In other words, it is secure, it's safe, and it's available for people to use. And we can also clone, like if imagine you're doing performance testing, load testing, and you don't care very much about the variations of the data. What you really want is just lots and lots of data. So take my favorite 5 customers and clone them 1,000,000 times. And I'm going to do my load testing, and we can ensure all the referential integrity. We can ensure that no collisions happen, and make that data available for use very quickly through self-service. So we'll have follow-up sessions. I know there's sessions that we've previously run on our YouTube channel as well that go into a lot more depth around synthetic data generation. But the main thing I wanted to make sure everybody knows is this partnership unlocks this use case and these use cases now for the mainframe, which is incredibly exciting. Okay, so with that, I am going to switch over and actually show you what this looks like in practice. So just let me make sure my connection's still alive before I share my screen.
I'm going to stop sharing the slides, Simon, and you can share your screen when you're ready.
Okay, so here we go. Let me know if you can see that.
Yep, we can see it.
Perfect. Okay, so we're actually running this inside our cloud. And the first thing I'm going to show you is how do we actually connect to the mainframe. So we go into our studio. So there's a number of different elements in K2view. Each of these interfaces are really, they're really purpose designed for each role. Typically, the person that would use the studio would be a more technical user who understands things like connection details and how to configure a JDBC interface. So you can see that we're running this on our host here with Rocket Software. It's going through this particular port, and username, passwords. These can be stored in a secret manager or a KMS, and then you can see the connection string that we've got here. So now I've configured that. It allows me to run queries directly on the mainframe. And so I'll just run an example query here. And you can see this, came back in 125 milliseconds. It's actually, it sometimes comes back even faster than that. So we've noticed, through our partnership, it's really fast. I mean, because it's running natively on the mainframe, the speed that you can get is like nothing else that we've seen. And we're going to actually take this data. So this is our production, right? It's actually a customer. It's coming from, there's a single vSAM file with 3 different copybooks. We've actually configured that. I'll briefly just show you this in here. So this is actually Rocket Studio that's running. And this is where we would configure each of the virtual tables and views. So you can see this order table here. And you can see the name of the actual vSAM file here. And we'd be able to configure the even things like the SQL queries that are used to segment this particular vSAM file based on the copybook. So that's already been done and set up. It's a one-time setup, and that allows me to run these queries. So what I'd like to do now is imagine I've got to take this data out of the mainframe for testing. So as I mentioned before, it brings up all these questions like, how are we going to secure it? How are we going to identify the PII? So we've actually able to run our catalog on top of the mainframe. And you can see here that it's identified that there's these 3 tables. There's a customer table, order, and products. And they are related. Basically, we've identified this through the scan, that there is a customer ID that relates each one of these. And so, the order is related to the customer and so on. This is a fully editable catalog. We can even use AI to drive this. So I'm going to be brief on this because we don't have a lot of time, but you'll find more YouTube videos that'll explain exactly how this works. So now that I've done that, and I know, for example, we've identified this PII, we've classified it, so I know where the sensitive data is, like the city, the phone, and so on. And those are automated classifications that have been picked up by our catalog. Now I can actually switch to put my testing hat on. And so as a QA lead, imagine I'm trying to get access to the mainframe data. Normally I'll have to go and find my mainframe buddy and plead with them, please, can you help me get access to this data? But here, because we've got this solution in place, I can just do this through a task. And the task is really simple. In this one, it's actually extracting 5 orders from production and passing that into UAT. So this is a subset, like we said before, and I just have to fill in these boxes. So here, where do I take the data from? Well, in this case, I'm going to take it from production, and I'm going to automatically mask the sensitive data. This is not optional, right? I don't have any way to override this. And it's taking orders, which are it's not an orders table. It's all those 3 tables that we saw in the catalog before. So this is going to take the whole thing and keep all that referential integrity. And then we get to subset it, which in this case, I've got the IDs, actual customer IDs, but I could, for example, just use parameters, right? I could start to use parameters and say, I want it from this country, I want the customers to be of this type, maybe find customers that have had a billing issue before. But in this case, I'm just going to stick to the entity list. And then I can say here, do I want to store this in our test data store? This avoids you having to go back to production, right? So this is really powerful, because if you've already got the data in the test data store, which we encrypt, and we don't store any sensitive data, every single customer record or individual record will be encrypted with its own key. It means you don't have to go back to the mainframe, right? You can just take the updates from the test data store. And then this is also where we store snapshots and do rollbacks and things like that. And then the last step is just saying, where do I want to actually send this? So I'm going to send it to UAT. So notice that I don't have to be messing around with connection details and individual system names. As a tester, I just send it to UAT, and that can be a collection of different systems. And I'm going to load it, right? I could do other things in here, like reserve it. So I reserve it for my testing, so no one else can touch it during the period that I'm testing. And it's automatically going to take care of all the referential integrity, making sure that it loads it into the target VSAM file accurately. So that's all I need to do. If I go back to this menu here, I can literally just click play, and you'll see, actually, while I'm doing that, this is my target. So if I run this, you'll see we only have 1 customer in there right now. If I run that again, you'll see that more are being added. And what I want to do, just to finish this off, is take an individual customer record. So let's look at this particular one. So Fran Wilson is the contact. You can see the email address. This is in production. And then if we run the same query now on the target, you'll see that we've masked to a fictitious company name. We've got Grant Coleman now as the contact. And we can see that, we've got a fictitious email, phone number, address, and all of that has basically been synthetically created to keep the realism and the accuracy, but make sure that it's completely non-sensitive. And we do have ways that I won't dig into now, but ways to actually analyze and audit this, so you can prove to auditors that this has been fully desensitized. And obviously I was doing it through the self-service experience here, but I could have done the whole thing through the API. We have fully interactive Swagger documentation here, so you can tie it into your favorite CI/CD flow. Yeah, and with that, I'm going to hand back, and we'll carry on.
Okay, thank you, Simon. I'm gonna bring up the presentation. And Simon, could you just take us through takeaways? We're going to wrap up the session now and get to Q&A.
Absolutely, yeah. So before we get to questions, I think, pretty obvious, but just as a recap, I think what we've seen in practice has been the real problem here is that mainframe traditionally has been very siloed. We know how difficult it is to get access. This really opens up the mainframe to a lot more use cases. And think about it in the context of being able to combine it now with multiple systems, right? So you get that complete view, and you can secure the data no matter where it's sitting. So it really brings the mainframe into the fold, whether it's part of a modernization program or not. We can really dig into that with you. In terms of what works, I think the biggest thing that I've seen really is just the speed now with which we can actually get this data extracted and get it in the hands of testing teams. And it's really beginning to uncover new options that just weren't available to the QA teams before, which obviously improves security, it improves productivity, it de-risks from the company's perspective as well. And then in terms of what we're going to do next, we're going to dig into AI in a follow-up session. So there's a lot of really amazing agentic use cases that this unlocks. A lot of the questions that get asked of agents can only really be answered by data that is sat in these operational systems. And the mainframe, it's amazing to think this, but still 70 to 80% of the world's global transactions still go through mainframe. So you just can't answer these operational questions like, where is my order and why is it delayed and why did I get charged more on my bill last month if you don't have access to the mainframe. So really excited about what this unlocks as well. Amitai, maybe
Okay.
if we're going to
Awesome.
do
Yeah, let's see. We have time maybe for a few questions. The first one I think is for Don. Does your mainframe solution require anything to be installed and configured in CICS?
No, we obviously we recognize that most production systems are either CICS based or IMS based, but our software does not run inside either of those monitoring systems. It's just a ZOS started task.
Okay, cool. And there's a question, I think it's for you, Simon. Do you support masking of IMS load and unload files?
Yes, we do. Yeah, this is actually something that's come up a few times. Teams often will take a kind of backup of IMS, and they'll do that by creating an unload file. And then if they're loading that into a non-prod system, then really there's a conversion that has to happen between unload and load, so you can get that back into a non-prod IMS. And we are able to mask the data for that. We've got a couple of different approaches that we can use for that.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll just now refer back to the poll. I mean, that the greatest driver, the biggest response in terms of challenges for mainframe data is compliance and gaps that occur when you're trying to do data masking. So this is something we see not just across mainframe, but is a general problem in the market, is that when you're moving data from higher environments to lower environments, compliance is a real challenge. So definitely a mainframe issue, but also I think across other systems as well. So I think that's very common and in line with what we see in the market. So we're going to wrap it up here. I mean, we touched briefly on a lot of different great topics, which we're going to circle back to in future webinars. I'd encourage you to download the data sheet and the attachments. And reach out to Rocket Software at K2view through our websites, request a demo. We'd be happy to show you in greater detail and what that would look like in your environment. And so thanks everyone for attending and looking forward to seeing you in future webinars. And thank you, Simon and Don, for presenting with us today. Thank
My
you.
pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers.
See you next time.
Yep.
Bye-bye.